Okay, so let's talk about what happened to Kane. And Kane, why don't you lead off with that?
That would be wise, yeah.
Okay. You want me just to jump right into it?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
Um, I was using an HP for staking coins, and I did use Chrome browser on the staking laptop, which is, I guess, no number one. You're supposed to use a staking laptop just for staking. So, with that being said, I was apparently signed in to Chrome on my HP, but also at the same time, I have a Mac. So I was signed into Chrome on that. And with the sync feature, it was pulling all my information and tabs between the two computers. Okay. So everything that was on the Mac ended up being on the Chrome. I don't know exactly how the hacker got in. I think Big Easy has reduced it to a dirty executable file was dropped on my computer. And with that, he was able to remote access in through TeamViewer, which was also loaded on my computer from a prior engagement. And while I was out, he he dropped in. I believe he probably was monitoring my activity and movements to figure out when I would not be home or when I would be asleep. And so I came back to my laptop, and the command line screen was open, and TeamViewer was up. Now I hadn't had used TeamViewer in 2 months, so I knew something was wrong right away. What prompted me was the notifications from Google about how my recovery email and phone number had both been changed. Um, I did not have 2FA on my Gmail, but I had my phone number linked to the app on my phone to alert you for security sign-ins. That's how he was able to get around actually hacking Gmail. He didn't actually have to hack Gmail. So he entered my computer as if he were me and just started changing all the information. And once he compromised Gmails and added in a phone number and his recovery email, the accounts essentially became his. And then that's when he started attacking my cryptocurrency exchange accounts. Again, because of the sync feature on Chrome, all the tabs were pulled over from my Mac. So all he had to do was just access the drop-down boxes, and everything was right there. Also, the autofill and manage storage password features, that carryovers as well. I don't think people really realize that. Cookies, browsing history, passwords, sites, everything pulls over with the sync feature. That's why it's important to turn this off. So with that, he was able to just maneuver around my laptop as if it were his, and he just started compromising accounts. I'm not too well versed on how he actually managed to get into Binance, but I had 2FA on all the exchanges, but he was able to bypass that through cookies. And Big Easy can explain this a lot better than I can, which I'll maybe you should hand that over to him as a segue about the cookies
So
issue.
there's a couple of things. Number one, I dropped a tap on his computer to try and get a bit of an idea of what was going on. And the reason why is because the only way that I was going to be able to determine how fucked, if we want to use that word, he was, is by seeing everything that's going on his computer that he was using for staking and the computer that was compromised. A lot of the time when I engage with clients or customers, they tell you a rough idea of what's happening, but they don't know how to really explain it well. And that's from just both the technical and the reality, like the real standpoint. What I was able to determine is that there was malware hiding in app data on a Windows device, which is very, very common. That's usually where anytime you usually go on the internet and you're downloading something off of a website or you're downloading data off a website, whether it's cookies or something else, it typically stores in app data. And when I was going through his entire computer, I determined that there was one file that was super suspicious. And what I did was sandboxed it and saw that it immediately tried to compromise not only the command line, but Explorer, which is the main process and application that's running on all Windows devices. So to be less technical, he had malware on his device, whether that was from downloading a malicious file or from a malicious advertisement, remains to be determined.
So from a let's slow it down
that
there.
was used as a backdoor, and the file was first reported, I think, a week ago. So it was a pretty new piece of malware. And when really understanding what happened, this hacker was a little bit sloppy, used a backdoor and saw that there was TeamViewer on his desktop, used that as a way of trying to exfiltrate as much information as fast as possible, and used a cookie, which is a very common technique that hackers use, is they use the cookie and they steal the session from your web browser if they have access to it. And that's how he was able to get into Binance immediately. So when you sometimes log into Binance and you have a session cached and you're not like kind of refreshing your browser always and doing incognito mode and taking the necessary steps to make sure that your browser's clean, you have this cookie saved and this session saved. At that point, he doesn't need to verify, the hacker does not need to verify how to get onto Binance. What he does need to verify, though, is how to withdraw the money, which is why 2FA became very, very, very valuable in this circumstance, because when Kane withdraws money, every time you have to use your Google Authenticator, or for his circumstance, he uses the Authenticator to use the 2FA to exfiltrate. And what happened was there's very common applications out there that are open source that people use that hook into your computer, and once it hits an exchange, it will try to liquidate all of your finances by just kind of, you input commands that are from the keyboard into this application so that it knows, look for this, sell this at this value, and it winds up liquidating his account, which is what happened in this. However, because he had 2FA set up on most of his things, the guy was not able to get to that second step and was not able to withdraw all of his currency in this circumstance. I think the other thing that's really important to mention is that without 2FA in this, most of his things would have been pretty much nuked and gone. And the best example is 2FA wasn't set up on his Gmail, which is how the hacker was able to get onto his Gmail, change the personal information on it to match the hacker's name and the hacker's credentials, so that when the hacker tried to communicate with Binance to remove 2FA, he said, "This is my email address, this is my information, please remove 2FA so that I'm able to withdraw my money." Fortunately, Binance froze the account because Kane contacted them in enough time and was able to pretty much hold on to most of the currency that he was able to hold on to.
Thank you. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So just to take it back, for the lay people out here, because not everybody has the computer background or when you said he downloaded a malicious file or a hack through an advertisement or some sort of file, what are common ways this can happen to people? Like how do you find yourself downloading one of these files, and how can you protect yourself from that? Because that was the initial problem, correct?
There's a lot of different things you could be doing. I think first, JavaScript, which is a very well-known coding language, is how a lot of the things that you interface with on the internet, that's what they're written in. And in this circumstance, JavaScript is a lot of malware is written in JavaScript, and what they do is when people create an advertisement, they push it out to an exchange, and that exchange sells it to a website, and that targets you. And what happens is the advertisement becomes malicious. So anytime you hit that website, you're going to download that cookie and that application and all the data that comes with it. That's one way that malware is done. Another way is by downloading a lot of these open source wallets, and they are malicious, or they're not intended to be malicious, but the website that you go to that you download it from winds up being a malicious provider of a wallet. And I'm not saying that that was the circumstance, because I wasn't really fully able, unless I did a full forensic image, which would have taken a very, very long time. It wouldn't have been really beneficial for anybody. That's how we would have been able to truly determine what happened. But malware can be downloaded from either an advertisement, from a file that you think is real or not. And the best way to defend against that is always check the cryptographic hash of the file. At the bottom of any GitHub thing, they should have what the hash is. And the best way to do it is you take that file and you can upload it into VirusTotal or another scanning application to verify whether or not it's a legitimate app. That's really one of the best things you should be doing. The most effective way to eliminate this from happening is to disable JavaScript on your web browser. Everybody can pretty much do that. It will absolutely ruin the enjoyment of visiting websites, because everything's really written in JavaScript, but it's the fastest way to determine that you're not going to get hacked from an advertisement or any type of malicious JavaScript on a website that way. That's really what I recommend when it comes to that.
So I don't know if Kane wants to disclose how much he lost, but it was a very, very significant amount. And
yeah, it's actually a running tally at this point due to all the positions that were liquidated into Ethereum. And the day that this happened, Ethereum actually took a nosedive the following day. So I lost a significant amount there. Plus, I lost 2 of my staking coins. One of them was Strat, which is about $15,000 at this point. The tab now is over $40,000 USD that I lost. Even though I retained the Ethereum, I still lost the USD value.
Yep. So losing 40K USD, losing access to your exchanges, so you don't have the ability to trade or whatnot. There's so much uncertainty there. What about
exchanges.
You lost? Weren't your credit cards compromised as well? Your email addresses.
Yes.
So this is why it's just so serious.
Yeah.
Like and Kane has been somebody that's been in the dojo since day one. I mean, really a solid contributor. Always helpful to other members, and just really good conversation. Good guy. And when he said this happened, it was like I felt it, man. Like it really hurt me to hear that, and it was just like a total nightmare. And it also gives you the perspective that it could happen to anybody. It really can. So that's why I felt it was so important to do this webinar, to tell you guys the story of what happened with Kane. I know you guys want me to show coins 24/7, but it doesn't matter how many coins you have. If your security gets compromised, somebody's going to have them all. So it's just like, think about like somebody breaking into your house, like how violating that feels. And people that live in New York know about that, but Easy knows what I mean. But to have somebody in your computer and in your identity, having access to all your emails, your cell phone, your crypto, I mean, it's really a horrible thing to deal with. So I wanted to do what I could with these guys on behalf of the community, not just the dojo, not just KJ Trading, but everywhere, to place more awareness on these type of things and kind of help you guys protect yourselves. So I would get, yeah. Eric? I mean, easy.
The biggest thing I want to talk about is that this week, me personally, I dealt with 4 different breaches. I would say this is one of them. The other 3 were all from phishing attempts that are very, very good. And this is a very popular time of the year for people to get phished, because so many financial documents are passed around via email, and it's very easy for a hacker to send either an HR department, an accounting department, or a CFO or a CEO an email of an invoice that looks legitimate and winds up being a malicious file. Or another example of something else that happened this week for a client of mine is my client was contacted by what my client thought was Apple support from Apple, and it was indeed just a phishing attempt where this person said, "Hi, I'm calling from Apple support. Your account has been attempted to be accessed from a location in what appears to be Ohio, and then California, China, Singapore, and Mexico. Can you do me a favor and run through the following steps?" And my client went through this entire process with this person that she believed was an Apple support technician. And in the process, she wound up giving up her credentials to her Apple ID account and her iCloud account. And what happened from there was the malicious hacker created a reverse session through a very commonly used thing on all Macs that is probably on most of the people watching this feed right now. It's probably enabled on most of their computers. It's under System. I'll tell you exactly where it's under. If you go to System Preferences and you go to iCloud and you scroll to the bottom where it says Back to my Mac, you'll see that it's either checked or not checked. And what this typically does is it gives someone the ability from iCloud or from pretty much any location to be able to get into your computer. And from there, if you have any credentials cached or any session that's live, if it's been on Amazon Prime, if you have your Gmail open, this person could start actively stealing this information and using it against you. So what happened was my client had her Amazon account hacked. She had 3 of her credit cards hacked, and she had, what was the last thing that happened? They tried to do a wire transfer at the end of it, but fortunately it got blocked. But the point is that there's a lot of phishing attempts going on, and it's not going to be malware. In fact, the easiest way to get someone is through phishing. And it's very important for people to realize that there's many, many different things you can be doing to protect yourself. And one of it is understanding that when you feel as if you've been compromised, it's up to you to really either A, set the right things in place to make sure that you're making the right steps to protect yourself, or B, that you've set the right steps up previously to protect yourself. If you think you've been hacked, it's up to you to manually find out who to contact. If Apple has hacked you, if you think there's a problem with an Apple ID account or anything Apple related, if you're an Apple consumer, you should actively go to the Apple support website and not click any links. Rule number 1 about Apple, they will never, ever reach out to you or never send you a link that you actively need to drive to, because they know that so many people are trying to phish them on a daily basis and phish their clients. If that's the case, find the website yourself and ensure that it is Apple's website, because there are so many very good spoof websites. I believe it's like support.apple.com is the standard. Apple sends out emails all the time. They have posts. If you just Google Apple phishing scams, they have constantly, I think once a month, they're putting out some type of article on how to get hacked. Now, while for Kane's instance, it was on a Windows device, it's important for people to realize that it doesn't really matter what operating system you have. No one operating system is more secure than another. And that's something that we constantly get asked in the dojo frequently is, well, I have a Mac. Is this more secure than Windows? I have Linux. Is this more secure than Mac? And the real answer is you are the threat vector. The user is the threat vector. That is exactly what we train all of our clients to understand. That's what we train everybody to understand. And if you don't start understanding that, then you're the person that's going to be at fault.
Eric, what about FUD files? I don't even know what that is. Do you know what that is? Now I can't hear you.
One more time, what were you saying?
What about FUD files? Do you know anything about that?
FUD files?
Yeah, I don't know what they're talking about.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. Do you have, by the way, do you have the ability to open the chat on your, you can open the YouTube chat?
Give me 1 sec.
We're getting a lot of questions, but one question for you, I guess, from myself. Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Okay. I do my trading on one specific computer. That's all I use. Is I don't do anything on that computer. And then I have another one for staking. That's all I use that for. And then I have a MacBook Pro that I use, regular stuff, browsing and whatnot. Is that the safest way to go? And I think that something like for trading, if you're going to do your trading, like maybe what's that? Like a cheap Chromebook or something? Would that be a recommended way to go for people?
So, I guess similar to what I said earlier, there's no real operating system or type of computer that you should be using for your security. I think it really doesn't matter because they're all vulnerable in their own way. And I think Chris Chris Black, who's one of the administrators in the group, is very adamant about single point of failure, and I do agree with him that I think you need to just, generally speaking, diversify yourself. To answer your question directly, I think as long as you're using a device that is solely used to go to the internet, and if you are staking on it, you set it up so that it's locked down to only access certain URLs, certain ports, and certain IP addresses, then you're more likely to be more secure. And as long as you've set up some type of multi-factor authentication to access that device, it becomes a lot harder for a user to get to it. So if I were you, what I would do is, again, use multiple devices for multiple things. I think if you're going to be accessing a website, especially if you're using a trading laptop to go on exchanges, make sure you're using incognito mode, or that you're able to refresh and delete your cookies and all of the cache data every time you close a session. You want to be able to make sure that you have to log into each exchange every single time. You also want to make sure that you have as many steps of authentication as possible. Each exchange should have its own email address. Every login account should have its own password. That's a no-brainer. And what you should do is max out the amount of characters you can use, because the truth is, length is more important than actually diversifying your password. Because what I do on my day-to-day is, when it comes to us hacking people and hacking clients, we typically steal their cache passwords very, very easily and pipe it into either a mining rig or some type of decryption tool, and use Hashcat to run through a database of password dictionaries. And because most people are using the same password over and over again, or the same variation, it's very, very easy to find it and decrypt it. So my biggest things to answer you, and I know I'm kind of going on a rant, is number one, make sure everything is locked down for its own thing. I would have one computer for staking and make sure that it's locked down to only contact with the IP address or the port that is necessary for staking. I would have one computer for trading that is specifically for exchanges, and make sure that every time you log off of that exchange or you log off of a session, that all of the data is cleared from the device. And lastly, you want to make sure that all of this is separate from whatever you're doing on like your day-to-day that's personal to you. I can't say that enough, because the example is Kane. The guy was able to get to Kane's Gmail, and from there he was able to get to everything. If, let's say, he had it set up so that the exchanges weren't accessed by one email address, it wouldn't be a single point of failure. And that's really what Chris talks about as a single point of failure, is someone accessing one point and being able to use that to pivot to different aspects. So multiple passwords, maxed out passwords on length, different login accounts, and different devices for different applications and different uses that you need to do.
Okay. So one of the questions that people are asking is, what can we do to be safer, obviously, become less of targets? And this is something that you've recommended to me that I've acted on, is creating a separate email for each exchange. That the email is very random. Nothing that anyone could figure out. Proton Mail is a good service there. So I've created a bunch of Proton Mails. You put 2FA on your email, and then you use each email only for one exchange. So you create one fake email, or not fake, it's just an email just to log into Binance. And you create a Binance. You put 2FA on your Binance. And so you're going to end up with 5, 8 different emails, but this is the safest way to do it. And then you need 2FA on both your email and your exchange. And what you need to do is keep a hard copy of the keys to the 2FA in case something happens to your cell phone. Correct? Easy?
I just want to make sure you can hear me. Just
Yes,
give me a
you're
thumbs
good.
up if you can hear me right now. Okay. I totally agree with that, because you also want to make sure that you're saving the private keys affiliated with each account that you're using 2FA for. Because the truth is, if you lose your cell phone, or you lose the backup that you have for your dual factor, you lose all your keys. You're never going to be able to access your shit. That's really why it's set up that way. What makes Proton Mail amazing is that you can actually set up a decryption key and a password. So it's essentially 2 passwords in addition to the 2FA. So if I'm a hacker and I'm trying to access your account, let's use Binance for example. This is really one that I think is a good one. If you have Proton Mail set up for Binance, and let's say Kane's circumstances that the hacker steals the cookie session and wants to exfiltrate all of his currency to a wallet somewhere else, what he would have to do is verify the 2FA first on Binance. He would then have to go into his Proton Mail account where he would have to have the first password to log in, the 2FA to get past that, and then a decryption key to get into the email address to verify it. That's so many steps that you would have to take to get something. And the reality is hackers are fucking lazy. I'm so adamant about that. The reason why the term hacking exists, which is a really bad word because the truth is compromising accounts and maliciously exploiting accounts is the better word. Hacking is just a way of doing something a lot faster by cutting corners. That's what that term means. And the reality is hackers are lazy, and that's what they do. They're going to use custom applications to move this stuff as fast as possible. They're going to be sloppy along the way. And we saw that with Kane, where this guy tried to use TeamViewer. TeamViewer was to me the sloppiest aspect of this, because that's what caught Kane's attention.
There he is. Just figured we'd bring Chris into the fold as well.
I think it's good to have Chris in this stuff because he's got more experience than me, and he's seen computers kind of expand over the years from I've seen Windows XP, but I was much, much younger, and Chris has been working in the industry, seeing people use all different types of devices in different ways, and how kind of authentication has become so different over the years.
Yep. One question that's coming from the group: should we should we hide our IP address? So I believe they're implying using a VPN or Tor, correct?
So I think it's important for people to know that a lot of exchanges won't allow you to do that. I think it's great to use a VPN on your day-to-day, because the truth is you're not giving up information to websites and companies that can use that against you. We can use Google and Facebook if we really want to go down a rabbit hole, but I think using a VPN on your day-to-day is a really good safe measure that you should be using. And if you want to take it one step further, using the Tor browser is excellent because it's an anonymizer, and it's very, very hard to determine at that point who's doing what. And to be fair, that's where I'm really struggling to find out who this hacker is, because he was using VPN and an anonymizer, and it's very hard to scramble back to who it is unless I have that live session or some other aspect of DNS data to use it to find out more.
Yeah, and VPN encrypts your traffic end to end. There's certain services that allow you also to change your endpoint, which means that you're able to have an endpoint in specific countries. So you want to look for those types of VPNs, because sometimes certain VPNs won't allow you to access certain exchanges, but the ones that you can specify, give me an endpoint in Canada, give me an endpoint in the US and Europe, wherever, those you have a bit more granular control of how your IP is going to come out at the other end.
If I can interject for a second, I do think it's important for anybody arriving late to this conversation to understand the hacker didn't compromise my email from outside. He had actual access remotely to my laptop. And he was able to get behind the scenes and change everything, not from just simply, the forgot password feature. So he was actually on my browser and started changing information. And once he had that, he compromised 2 Gmails and a Proton Mail. That's what I think people need to understand about this. And with the sync feature, once he had access to all that, because it pulls all your history and tabs, he then could just go through every exchange. I mean, he got into my Amazon account, ran up that credit card, ran up several other credit cards. This is very disrupting. It didn't just affect crypto. This affects life itself. So, and I did have NordVPN on the laptop he got into too. So this wasn't an IP address tag. This was him actually gaining access to my laptop because it was open, because I was staking coins. So it's a little bit different than just compromising email from the outside.
Okay, so by the way, guys, there's one other instance of another member that got, really destroyed with a hack. I did share the BTC and ETH wallet addresses. These I'm going to distribute between Kane and Archer, the other gentleman who lost half of his portfolio in a similar type of hack, which we'll discuss next. I'm personally donating a good portion of the dojo fees of April to these guys to try to help make them whole again. It's the least I can do, and people within the dojo have donated. We're nowhere near what they lost, but we're doing our best. So, if you guys appreciate this type of webinar, or just, have some compassion, think how you would want to be treated, I would really appreciate if you could help them out a little bit. Yeah.
One thing I want to talk about is, and I saw this earlier, there was a question about DuckDuckGo that I answered. And so I think I want to step back for a second, and I want Chris to also comment on this, is I think when people need to think about security, and we've kind of touched around this topic multiple times, you have to think about a layered approach. That is the term that we always use, is a layered approach, which means setting up as many steps and as many different layers of security whenever you're doing something. And that is the term that I use with all of my clients on a day-to-day, whether it's looking at from the network as a pen tester or looking at it from a cryptocurrency trading account. Using a layered approach means setting up whitelisting IP addresses for exchanges so that you can only access an exchange from a specific IP that you're logging from. It means setting up the 2FA in addition to that. It means using your VPN when you're visiting websites. It's about using a layered approach so that you are ensured that you are as secure as you can be on a day-to-day, because the reality is no one is 100% secure. Anyone who tells you you're going to be 100% secure from a service or an application or a tool is lying to you. And that is the biggest way to pick out either a salesman who's lying and doesn't know anything, or someone who doesn't know security. Everyone is able to be exploited, and no one person is 100% safe ever.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I've been in the space for a very long time. As you can see, I'm not really young. I've axed a lot of my expertise on security, and I know I'm just as vulnerable as anybody else. And many times, actually, people that are in security, they are even more vulnerable because they take a lot of things for granted, because thinking they understand everything. But all of this to make you try to understand one thing: your biggest vulnerability vector is you. And the fastest you understand this, and the fastest you accept it, not just saying, well, it won't happen to me, because a lot of people get hacked thinking they can't get hacked. It's other people that are not being careful enough. But you don't go on too much porn sites. You don't do on too many unsafe things on the internet. So it's probably not going to happen to you. And screw that if my antivirus expires and I don't have a firewall and I'm not using VPN. It's all right. It doesn't happen to me. Every single person that gets hacked doesn't think they're going to get hacked. So you're your own threat, and you've got to take action right now and start analyzing everything you're doing from the outside in, and seeing if you're able to do anything to make yourself safer. That's the only way you'll make it hard, to the point where script kiddies, which is 98% of hackerlings out there, are going to say, screw this is too hard, I'm going to go off to another target. That's all you can really do, is make it hard to the point where you'll no longer become an interesting target.
Yep. Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris. One thing that I just thought of, another way people get hacked is through the Wi-Fi. Can you guys explain how that works and how people can avoid that? Because most people leave the passwords to their security as whatever the ISP set it up as, and I probably butchered that, but I think that's kind of the gist.
No, you're actually pretty damn close. A lot of people use they use very unsafe passwords that are very easy to hack and crack. And what they'll do is they'll start running. They'll drive up to your driveway, and then they used to call this war dialing before, and now there's a new term for it. Eric, you probably know what it is. But what they're doing is they're just going there. They're into your driveway, and they're running, password hackers as they're eating a freaking burrito. Eventually, it gets through it, because your password is probably 6 characters long or something like that, and then that's done pretty easily with computers these days. They get into there. They use your default admin router config credentials, and then that's it. They're in, and they can do whatever they want with your network. You're screwed. They find an HP printer in there. It's using really old Tomcat technology. There's no protections. They're able to insert a server inside your network because it's really practical to have an HP printer that's wireless that you can print anything from your phone inside your network, and you're safe, right? Because it's inside. Well, no, you're not. So yeah, you want to make your passwords as hard as possible to figure out. Yes, war driving.
So it's funny you say that, because whenever I go to whenever I travel with my friends, like these last 2 weeks, I was at 2 bachelor parties, and I did the example twice for my friends, how once you get onto someone's Wi-Fi, which really isn't complicated, because the Wi-Fi is usually related to something that's either a name, something that somebody likes, which can all be determined off of social media because everyone has a external footprint, or is related to the location of where somebody lives. Once you get onto their Wi-Fi, there is no doubt in my mind that every single router, for the most part, is set up with default credentials, because the last 5 places I've been to for leisure use, whether it's a friend's apartment or an Airbnb, I've been able to get on the Wi-Fi and change their password, and more importantly, create a rule for my IP address to be able to get to their router whenever I want. And that is very, very easy, because people do not realize that Comcast, Spectrum, Fios, whatever ISP you use, whether it's in the States or abroad, that the default creds are pretty much set. If you go to either 10.0.0.1 or 192.168.100.1 or whatever the IP is, which is pretty common usually, you typically can get in with either admin password, admin, or by simply Googling what are the default credentials for this ISP and the router.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said it. I've also helped a lot of my friends, and the first thing I asked them, because if I have to go and do some modifications to the router, is what's your password for your router? They don't know. So what do? I Google the default password for that device, and 100%, you're absolutely right. Most of the times, I would say 9 times out of 10, it's the default password user.
And to pick up where Chris said about the war driving and the war dialing, that's a free tool, by the way. If you use Kali Linux, or I think Parrot Linux has it also. It's an application built into Linux called Aircrack NG. You could download a bunch of other ones, but Aircrack NG is the easiest one that exists. It's free as long as you download some type of open source password database. And if you Google it, there's tons of them. Rocku.txt. There's a guy named Troy Hunt that has huge password databases. You run an application through it, and one of them's going to hit. And once it hits, you're in.
Yep. There's a couple of applications also that can just download all the words that you've used for the past 5 years on your Facebook account and make a dictionary file out of it. And your girlfriend's password, your ex-girlfriend's name upside down is not a secure password. It'll find it, and you'll get cracked with it. So.
Yeah, if you guys came for shilling, this is not the stream.
Yeah,
it's not gonna happen. But I'd like to shift gears. And Chris, I know you worked with Archer, who was another dojo member who got hacked really badly. Do you recall the specifics of what happened? I know it had something to do with Cryptopia.
Yeah, it was actually a phishing attempt. It was a phishing attempt, this very well constructed phishing attempt to which he got messed up.
So
it's as simple as that.
So I mean, let's break it down for the people that may not even understand what a phishing attempt means.
A phishing attempt is very simple. You'll get an email. Most people that were on Cryptopia or on Binance got one in one of their email addresses for this new thing that Binance is doing, which is being able to manage your ERC tokens. So all you have to do is log in and put in your ERC address, and that's it. It goes through. You're able to manage them through Binance. Well, there's only one problem with that. Binance never actually sent that email. It was a very well constructed email that pretended to be Binance, and there was some Unicode characters in the URL. So if you're not paying attention, you're not going to notice there's a little dot underneath the ends or some of the characters that are different. This one was it wasn't even well done with the URL. It was BILNCE. Anyways, you had to be a retard to get caught with this, but I'm pretty sure there's some people that are going to get caught with it because, unfortunately, we live in the years of too long didn't read, and people just click on everything. So, unfortunately, people are going to get caught with that. But you got to look at the URL. You got to look at everything that you're clicking on, and be suspicious. Be always suspicious. I mean, you're going to be your own bank. You can't act like a retard on the internet. I'm sorry I'm using these terms, but I'm kind of sick and tired of hearing of people getting hacked because they're not paying attention.
I want to piggyback off of what Chris was talking about, and I just posted in the chat because I tried posting the URL multiple times, but Google clearly doesn't like it. Phishing Frenzy is the application that you can use. I use it for my clients when we do phishing simulations and phishing training. As long as you have a template of a previously used email, which every hacker who uses Binance just took that and then modified the hyperlink that it drives to, you literally can take that template, that exact email, and take the wallet address or simulate a wallet address, and boom, you can phish someone so easily, which is exactly what happened in this circumstance. That's something that we use for Outlook, for Gmail, for Proton Mail. I've used it for 2 clients. And pretty much what you're able to do is set it so that after they enter in the credentials to the fake URL, you can have it set to drive to actually Gmail or Outlook. So the user would think, oh, it must have just something got hung up in the middle of the interaction of me trying to get onto my email account. And then they don't realize that they just got phished.
All right, so let's open it up to Chris. Well, not Chris. I think we can open it up to some questions, and then we'll wrap up from the group. So I'll manage the questions. You guys have any? Easy, you have something to say?
I see a question that I immediately want to answer. It says, what's the most common way to get compromised outside of phishing attempts? The term is social engineering. It's being able to listen to any details and take that information to use it to manipulate against a person. And I can give 2 examples right now. One of it is my girlfriend that I live with has a gender neutral name, and because of that, I'm able to essentially call either any cable service provider or any account that she uses to pay bills. I could call up and say that I'm Jordan or Sam or whatever, and because her name is a very unisex, gender-neutral name, they think automatically that I'm that person. And it's very, very easy to use that information to get other information and pivot against that. I believe someone in the dojo today was talking about how he was walking home last night and someone started following him because he overheard a conversation about this person talking about a currency that person holds. That's something that is so common that people don't realize. Whether you're on public transportation, you're at a mall, you're shopping in a store, or hell, even if you're texting alone at a coffee shop, you never know who's sitting around you or trying to take that information and use it against you. So truthfully, other than phishing, social engineering is the most popularly used technique. And it's honestly what got me my job in cybersecurity today. Is I used it to call one of the clients of a company I was working at, and I scared the shit out of both the client and my former employer.
Yeah. And something actually to piggyback off of what Eric just said, very simply, hackers don't hack computers. They hack people. They're social engineers. They look through your stuff and they try to find your single point of failure. And that's usually your laziness. So yeah, they hack people, not computers. Remember that all the time.
It's always the user. It's the biggest vulnerability anywhere you go, or the biggest concern will always be not the computer and not the keyboard. It's the thing sitting right in front of it.
Yeah.
I was hacked, not the computer. The computer is just a tool.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. And, I think it would also be important to tell people, if you do get hacked, have a plan, because most people are probably going to freeze in these situations and they don't know what to do. I did initially for about the first hour, and then I got myself together. So I would recommend people make a list of every exchange that you use and how to contact them in the event that you do get hacked. Put on there all your credit cards, personal information, because this doesn't just stop at crypto, okay? I had to do a mass wipe of all my credit cards. I had to freeze my credit for all 3 bureaus. I contacted the FBI. I called my banks, which is another thing. I think we all have called our banks, and they give you the standard security verification questions, which is name, date of birth, address, and mother's maiden name, which are completely useless. For $5, I can get all that information off the internet nowadays. You have the ability to demand extra layers of security with all your banks and personal finance information that supersedes those levels of verification. So unique phrases and PINs, you can demand this, and I suggest everybody do that. It's way, way safer than using those standard 4 levels that are complete garbage in my opinion. So that's the main thing, is what to do in the event of a hack, because you're going to freeze. You will freeze immediately. Unless you've experienced it before, then you know. So I would have a game plan in the event that you are hacked, and then know what to do from there, because it's about planning.
I think I want to piggyback off of that. The term is instant response is what is the, I guess, enterprise term is. And most companies right now do not have an instant response plan. So if you think that, something that you should also remember is, just because you may not have an instant, like you may have things set up properly, doesn't mean your company does, because they have the keys to the kingdom to so many other people. And in a lot of ways, if I can't get to you and I want to, I'm going to target someone that's surrounding you, whether it's, I know that you work at Business X and that Business X has Betsy Sue working an administrative role. I'm going to go after Betsy Sue to pivot to you, because she's going to have some type of information that could be used against you. So you always have to remember that it's not just you that needs to set up the incident response plan. It's the company you work for or some other partnership that you have in place where someone would have that information. And the best example that I can use is Equifax, because Equifax was hacked, and now there's all these credentials because they couldn't clearly identify who got hacked, or else that person would have been notified, solely that person. That's legally what the response is that if a company gets hacked, they have to notify all stakeholders that have been compromised. And if they can't identify who that is, they have to notify all stakeholders. And if that's the case, you now see what happens when one place gets hacked and now it leaves this many people vulnerable.
Also, don't expect these exchanges to use common sense. Once the hacker had my email, he presented himself as me, and some of these exchanges were just being so cavalier with the information they were handing over. Cryptopia actually apologized to me for sending out a PIN reset code to the hacker, which would have bypassed 2FA, because they thought he was me, but another representative caught it in time and froze my account. Bittrex literally CC'd the compromised email with all the communication that I was sending them from another email. So the entire thread was then CC'd to the hacker. So any questions they were asking me and any personal information I was providing them, he got to see. So this is what you can expect if you do get hacked. Is these people are just they're humans on the other end, and to me it didn't seem like they really have a protocol in place for stuff like this, And I had know your customer on a lot of these accounts, and they didn't ask for a verification photo in real time or anything to make sure that the person they were talking to was me. So expect this. It's a level of incompetency.
Anything else? Thank you, guys. Yeah, like I said, this is really, really important stuff. It's something that people some people take it very seriously, and I think we all should. And you know what? Evelyn brought up a good point, actually. I forgot to comment on this because it's so funny. We had something within the dojo that was very relevant to what Evelyn said about talking about crypto everywhere she goes. So, like Evelyn, I am somebody that talks about crypto everywhere I go too. And part of why, well, I used to be, but part of why that's important is because it's a word of mouth thing. It does grow, and the more people, it becomes contagious. The more people that you impact and get into crypto, the more people, it's exponential. They tell more people, it becomes, like an epidemic, and that's how the space grows, and that's how more money comes in. So it's not like Fight Club, because if nobody talked about crypto, it would never grow. So it's not, it's important that we get the word out, but at the same time, you have to do it in a safe way. So, for instance, a guy in our group was in Philly, I think over the weekend, and there was some kind of scenario where a guy was walking up the street kind of looking like a shady character, selling drugs or whatnot, and this guy made some sort of joke about Monero. All he did was say the word Monero, and the guy started to follow him and his friends, and before he knew it, a car with two people pulled up next to him and said, "You got Monero," or something like that, and basically they were being followed up until the point where they were able to get into an Uber and get the hell out of there. But you have to be very, very careful, because people are catching on and they're realizing that you're walking around with your whole bank account in your phone. They have the ability to kidnap you and force you to send them, your crypto or whatnot. But it's scary. You have to take it very, very seriously and be careful about your surroundings and who you speak to about these things. Now, yeah, I mean, it's pretty much as simple as that.
I think that speaks more to Philadelphia than it does the person.
Yeah. So any comments on paper wallets?
Yeah, I just answered that one. That one there. It was a question on paper wallets. I guess if they're safe or they're good, sure, they're great, they're safe. But I mean, if you generate them straight online off of a website that offers the service of generating a paper wallet for you, you're doing it wrong. If you're storing it, taped underneath the top part of your dress, you're also doing it wrong. Your dresser is also doing it wrong. You need to apply as much common sense for the paper wallet than you would with anything else. You got to generate them offline, preferably on an air-gapped computer, which is a computer that is never on the internet. And you generate them there, and you store them in something that is going to be very, very safe, fireproof safe, or a bank vault or somewhere else that is.
Yeah, there goes Icon.
Yeah, and really safe. But
ICX, let's go.
Storing them properly. Hope that answers that.
I totally agree with him. I recommend using. I save private keys to an external hard drive that is very, very, very secure. The recommendation is air gapping, because and securing in a place that's very, very secure, because that just eliminates any access whatsoever to being able to access your private keys, because the private keys are the keys to the kingdom. I think it's important to also mention, if you trade for a business or you invest for a business, the recommendation is to split private keys amongst multiple shareholders, so that you have to use multiple points of access to put together the private key to be able to access the wallet. That is something that is not being done as frequently as it should be. I'm trying to implement a standard with a group of people right now when it comes to cybersecurity amongst crypto. And the most important thing that I tell them first is you share the private key and split it in cut the pie up as many different ways as you want, but you need to have a team together to be able to access the account that way.
Yeah, and Josh just asked a good question. What's the solution to that problem when everybody has their bank on their phone? Look, guns. Jake says guns, but even with guns, I mean, you're not going to go around on the street with $100,000 cash in your pocket. You just won't, or you're just asking to get robbed or asking for something to happen. So if you're going to keep something on your phone, make sure it's not your entire amount. Use common sense.
Right. Especially if you're traveling abroad or whatnot,
Yeah.
Well, Chris, I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Now I can.
I didn't say anything else.
Okay.
I was just nodding.
I feel all these YouTube channels are a bit too much exposure. But there was something else I was going to say. What was I going to say?
Anton, to answer that, you are right. But if you are going on the internet and you're externally putting yourself out there, then it's up to you to kind of secure your stuff and pretty much lock it down in the right way. Yeah, Chris and I clearly, not to be arrogant or cocky, but we're putting ourselves out there because we're confident in the way that we've set up security, and so is Jake at this point.
No,
because
I'm out here because this is what I do. I mean, don't make me a bigger target. Now, I've taken precautions, serious precautions, but it's a constant concern and something I need to progressively monitor and be very, very careful about. Now, that being said, we put ourselves out here. We try to provide something for the community. And, we also want to be safe. And there's not much you can do. I mean, you just put yourself in the best situation possible and, mitigate your risk. People are asking questions about, leaving everything on exchanges. And is it safe in the exchange if I have 2FA? You're never 100% safe. And keep in mind also the exchanges can be hacked. And it could have nothing to do with your security. Maybe they get hacked. And all of a
Can we
sudden
talk about
crypto's
that?
gone. So,
I want to talk about that because I've now helped out in a lot of audits where I understand how money flows in and out of exchanges and how they kind of conduct their business. Exchanges operate as one master mega wallet that does trading within a wallet. So if an exchange gets hacked and your currency is on it, and Gox is the best example, all of that currency is gone. And the likelihood is that you're going to lose what it was on or lose what you had on that exchange because it's one master wallet that's pretty much talking with each other, which is why you get very minimal fees when it comes to acquiring a currency from another currency. If exchanges are a huge point of failure, and that's why you should operate with having a hot wallet and a cold wallet, and that hot wallet should not be the exchange.
APIs. Question on APIs.
No on APIs. I mean, it's just another venue of exposure. It's really practical, especially if you're using these agglomeration softwares for tax reasons. But you know what? Just don't be lazy. Take your entries and then just put them into an Excel spreadsheet, and then eventually upload that Excel spreadsheet to your tax program afterwards. It's just the safest way to do it. Don't use APIs.
One thing of note. Kane, what coin did the hacker take on Cryptopia from you?
So on Cryptopia, he was able to not on Cryptopia. It was one out of staking. So he took proc. He took
your proc. Oh,
he took proc. I had actually a considerable.
Is there
amount
no
of proc.
shame?
You didn't need it anyway.
Sentimental value. I actually do miss proc. Sentimental value. Strat was lost. I was able to recover my Lux, thankfully, due to just having the keys and address in a completely different location. Another thing, kind of a side note of something to expect, the hacker actually emailed me from my own email trying to extort me about sending him the passwords for Lux and Stratus, or he would keep my emails forever. He actually then threatened me with a Pastebin link. And if anybody doesn't know what Pastebin is, it's a giant repository for basically hackers to dump data that they've stolen. That's where the hackers who hacked Sony dumped all 650 million accounts and everything like that. So that's just something else that you can probably expect if you do get hacked.
Yeah. Yeah, APIs can also be used to use something like Coinigy, where you could trade from like a third-party platform. Yeah. All right. So, any parting thoughts? We've been going on an hour. Please, out of the kindness of your heart, if this video did help you, it doesn't matter. In crypto, we look out for each other. And I say this all the time. Like, even people, anyone in the space, and like I said yesterday, we are part of a new movement. Where if you have the guts and the moxie and the chutzpah to get into this space and really stick with it, I honestly want you to succeed. I want us all to get rich together. I want us to be part of something great, which we are. And like I said, when a coin pumps and I don't have it, I'm happy for the people that are in. I hope they take profit and whatnot. But we're all kind of in this together. We need to start looking at this as more of a community. And historically, crypto has been a very supportive community. Bitcoin was something that was used for donations for many years. So, if you did get some value out of this, please, 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 if you have a little, it doesn't matter how much, $5, whatever, help these guys out. You would want it done. If you were in that position, it goes such a long way. I don't expect them to be whole after this, but every little bit counts. And I'm doing my part. Guys, Chris and Easy, you want to tell the people where they can find you on Twitter, in case they want, have questions or whatnot.
On Twitter, you can find me under Zaxa_crypto. That's ZAXA _crypto. And Big Easy.
I'm not listed as I'm listed as BigeasyShiller, but you can also find me at Crypto Rogan via the lovely Korean Jew. He dubbed me that.
I'll tweet their ats, so in case you want to follow them, you'll get their handles. Yep. One
last plug-in before we go. If you have a Ledger Nano, please update the firmware. I cannot say that enough. It recently has been a new exploit was shown and released. The new patch that was released can cover that. Please update it. There's directions online. I'll probably post something, or I'll have Jake post something, but please update your Ledger Nano if you have one.
Okay. All right, everybody. Have a good Sunday, and thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks for lending your time, and Kane, thanks for having the guts to tell your story. This wasn't my idea. I mean, I wanted to do a security seminar, but Easy and Kane approached me and they said they really wanted to do something live for the dojo so you could hear from Kane himself what happened to him, in an effort to prevent this from happening to other people in the future. If it saves one person, then it's worth it. And I said, well, why don't we just put it on YouTube for the whole community? It's not something that's just the dojo should be able to benefit from. So yeah, I hope you guys protect yourselves and enjoy. Take care, and I'll be back shilling stuff soon. I have a lot of coins I want to talk about. So this was specifically dedicated to the security aspect of this game, because it doesn't matter how much you gain if you're not protected. All right. So thank you guys.
Thanks,
Peace
guys.
out.
Take care.
Yep.